We keep a quiet kind of file in our heads, the stories where the first sign is small and wrong and somehow louder than a scream. Lauren Hale's began with a mailbox that did not know her name anymore. She works in medical device sales, the kind of job that sends you far away for too long. And what happened to her mattered because it wasn't just about a house. It was about being slowly replaced inside your own life. This is where she starts. I got home after an 18-hour flight with my suitcase bumping every step up the porch. The key turned like it always did. But the second I pushed the door open, my body stopped. Shoes. Men's shoes. A few pairs. Dumped like they belonged there. Flyers and mail were piled in a messy fan on the floor. Like someone had been stepping over it for weeks. I didn't walk in. I leaned back out and stared at the mailbox. It didn't say Lauren Hale. It said, Hale Family. My throat went tight. My first thought wasn't burglary. A burglary would feel sharp, fast. This felt lived in. I slid my phone out, more out of habit than a plan, and the screen lit my hand. I listened. From somewhere inside, glass clinked, a low laugh, then another voice, lighter, like it was trying too hard to sound comfortable. I pushed the door wider and called out. Hello. A pause. Footsteps. Someone cleared their throat like they'd been caught chewing. Hold on, a man's voice called back, casual in the way people are when they believe they own the room they're standing in. I didn't recognize it right away. That made it worse. I stepped in one slow pace, then another, keeping my suitcase by the door like I might need to drag it back out. The air smelled like beer and something sweet, like cheap candles. Lauren. The voice came again. Closer now. You're back early. It was Derek, my brother. Like that was the most normal thing in the world. You're in my house, I managed. You don't need to get worked up, he said, and I heard the smile in it. We've been taking care of things. We can still hear the moment her breathing changes there. The split second where the word family stopped sounding warm. Move, I told him, and my voice surprised me. Move away from the door. He laughed once, soft. Come on. Behind him, someone else spoke, a woman this time, close enough to be sitting on my couch. Is that her? Derek shifted, finally letting me see past him. Lauren, relax. Vanessa's parents are here. We're just having a drink. My suitcase handle squeaked as my hand tightened. I looked at the shoes, the mail, the name on the mailbox, and then at Derek's face like I was seeing it for the first time. Take your people, I said, and get out. I set my suitcase down without taking my shoes off. That alone told me something was wrong. I never left my shoes on in the house. Not this one. Derek stood there like he was blocking a draft, arms loose at his sides, acting calm in a way that felt practiced. Vanessa's parents were still in the living room. I could hear them murmuring to each other, the low sound of a private conversation that didn't include me. This isn't a good time, Derek said. You just got back. Sit down. We'll talk. I didn't move. I'm not sitting. I told him. You don't sit in someone else's house and tell them to calm down. He exhaled through his nose, the way he always did when he thought I was being dramatic. You're overreacting. This place was empty. That doesn't make it yours. Vanessa appeared at his shoulder then, holding a wine glass by the stem. She glanced at me once, quick and assessing, then looked past me at the door like she was measuring whether my suitcase was in the way. We thought you'd be gone longer, she said. You're always traveling. I looked at the glass in her hand. It was one of mine, the thin one from the back cabinet that I only used when I was careful. This house was never empty. I said, I live here. She shrugged. Barely. You weren't here. That landed harder than she meant it to. Or maybe exactly as hard as she meant it to. I took a breath and forced myself to look around. The couch pillows were turned the wrong way. My throw blanket was folded tight like it had never been used. On the side table, a coaster was stuck to the wood with dried beer. This wasn't damage. It was worse. It was familiarity. I didn't buy this place because it was big. I said, I bought it because it was quiet. Derek laughed, short and sharp. You didn't buy it alone. You had help. I had inheritance. I said, from my grandmother, and I worked. For years. Vanessa's mother leaned into the doorway then. Her voice was polite. Careful. Lauren, honey, we didn't mean to offend you. Derek told us this was a family arrangement. I looked at Derek again. He didn't correct her. This was never a family house. I said, it was mine. Derek finally shifted his weight. You didn't need something this big. I felt that familiar pressure in my chest, the one that always showed up when my life was being explained back to me. I needed a place where no one could tell me who I was. I said, that was the whole point. No one answered. The quiet stretched, heavy and full of things nobody wanted to say out loud. I slept in a hotel that night. Staying in my own home felt like consenting to my own erasure. I lay on the covers, scrolling through months of digital ghosts. The camera app was a graveyard of connection-failed icons. I remembered the first glitch while I was in Seoul. I'd blamed the hotel Wi-Fi, then the rain in New York, then my own exhaustion. I hadn't realized that Derek had simply unplugged the router the day he moved in, severing my digital eyes. My phone buzzed. Aaron! Lauren! She whispered, her voice brittle. Derek came by the office. He was asking if you'd calmed down yet. He's been in my house for months. Aaron, he bypassed everything. I swear. I followed the protocol. She rushed in, but the email, it came from your secondary account. It had your digital signature. It said there was a catastrophic pipe burst and Derek was handling the emergency repairs. I opened my laptop. There it was. An email sent at 3 a.m., exactly when I was over the Pacific. Unreachable. He hadn't just guessed my phrasing, he'd studied me. What about Meridian, I asked, referring to my HomeWatch service. They're paid to do bi-weekly walkthroughs. Aaron hesitated. Derek forwarded me a thread. He'd emailed them, impersonating you again, claiming you'd authorized a long-term guest and to pause physical inspections to protect your guest's privacy. Since the billing address was changed to his name, they didn't flag the discrepancy. They just saw a client wanting to save on service fees. My stomach soured. He hadn't just stolen a key. He had neutralized my entire defense system. And the utility alerts I asked. The electricity jumped 300%. I flagged that to him in October, Aaron said softly. He told me the contractors were running industrial dehumidifiers for the water damage. He even sent a fake invoice for the repairs. Lauren, he made it look like he was saving your house from rotting. I hung up. I hadn't disappeared. I'd been strategically rerouted. The next morning, I walked back into the house. Derek was in the kitchen, casually frothing milk for a latte. My latte. Morning, he said, the picture of fraternal concern. Ready to talk like adults, I watched him use my grandmother's silver spoon to stir his coffee. You didn't just move in. Derek, you hacked my life. You lied to Meridian. You lied to Aaron, and you diverted my mail to hide the evidence. He didn't flinch. He just sipped the coffee. You weren't here. Lauren, a house this size needs a pulse. I just gave it one. That was the moment it clicked. I hadn't been missed. I had been replaced. Erin met me at a coffee shop the next afternoon, her hands trembling as she peeled the cardboard sleeve off her latte. I've replayed the recording of that call 1,000 times. Lauren, I feel sick. Recording, I asked. She slid her phone across the table. Her office used an auto record system for all logistical calls. I hit play. The voice that came out of the speaker was mine. It had my cadence, my habit of laughing mid-sentence when I was stressed. Even the slight rasp I get when I'm tired. Erin, it's me. I'm literally at the gate for the Tokyo leg. My phone just cracked. I'm using a burner. Listen. Derek just called. There's a massive leak in the basement. I'm losing service, so just give him the spare. I don't want the house flooding while I'm over the ocean. Thanks, babe. I felt a chill wash over me. I was on a plane when this call was made. I didn't have a burner phone. Aaron nodded quickly, tears welling. I know that now, but it was so perfect. You'd just posted a photo of your boarding pass on Instagram 10 minutes before. I thought you were calling me from the jet bridge. I stared at the phone. Derek hadn't just guessed my movements. He had hunted them. He'd used the samples of my voice from my corporate webinars and family videos to train an AI model. He waited until he knew I was 10,000 feet in the air, signalless and silenced, to strike. The email came right after, Aaron added, showing me her screen. Hey, Aaron, about to lose service. Derek will grab the spare. Plumbing crisis. Help him out. I'll explain when I land. L. The dash before the initial my signature quirk. He'd studied my digital footprint until he could wear it like a mask. He didn't just walk in, Aaron whispered. He signed the visitor log at the office, showed a forged digital authorization on his phone, and picked up the envelope I left at the desk. He made it look like a coordinated handoff. That evening, I found Derek in my kitchen, scrolling through his phone with the casual ease of a man who had never committed a crime in his life. You used an AI clone, I said, my voice echoing in the hollow space of my home. You staged a disaster to trick my friend. He didn't look up. I used the tools available. You made it easy. Lauren, you broadcast your entire life on the internet. I just filled the silence you left behind. That wasn't a mistake. It was a heist. He finally looked at me, his eyes cold and devoid of remorse. You were unreachable. I solved a problem. If I had asked, you would have said no, because it's my house. Derek. And you weren't using it. He countered. Vanessa's parents needed a place, and we needed a base. I didn't just take a key. I took an opportunity you were wasting. In that moment, I realized this was never about family or a plumbing crisis. It was about the terrifying precision of a man who believed that if he could mimic my voice, he could own my life. By the time dinner rolled around, the house sounded like it belonged to someone else. Not loud exactly, just occupied. Cabinet doors opening and closing. The soft thump of feet on the stairs. A TV murmuring in the living room like background noise was a right. I tried to stay out of the way. That felt insane to even think, but I needed a minute to get steady. I stood in the hallway outside the garden room and stared at the door. The handle was smudged, like someone had been in and out all day. When I pushed it open, the air hit me first. Stale. Warm. My plants were there, but not really. Leaves curled in on themselves, soil dry and cracked. A stack of cardboard boxes leaned against the window where my chair used to sit. My chair was gone. I stepped back into the hallway and heard laughter from the living room. I followed it. Slow, like I was walking into a room where I knew I'd be outnumbered. Richard Sloane was in my armchair, my grandmother's armchair. He was tall, broad in the shoulders, wearing a collared shirt like he'd dressed for a dinner out. He had one ankle crossed over the other, like the leather belonged to him. Marjorie Sloane sat beside him on the couch, posture straight, purse on her lap even though they'd been here all day. Her eyes moved over me the way people look at a rental car they didn't choose. Vanessa was on my couch too, legs tucked under her, phone in hand, smiling at something on the screen. Derek stood near the kitchen opening, a beer in his hand, relaxed. Richard raised his glass at me. There she is. Marjorie's smile was polite. Lauren, we didn't expect you until later. Vanessa didn't look up right away. I told you she travels nonstop. Derek gave me a look that said, behave. I stayed standing. That chair isn't yours. Richard blinked like he'd misheard. Excuse me. That chair, I repeated. It was my grandmother's. You're sitting in it. Derek let out a small laugh, like I'd made a joke. Lauren, stop. Richard set his glass down, slowly, like he was choosing patience. Derek said, you're particular. I see what he meant. Marjorie's voice stayed soft. Honey, it's just a chair. It's not just a chair, I said, and you're not guests. Vanessa finally looked up. Her expression was light, almost bored. We're family. You're my brother's wife, I corrected. And you brought your parents into my house. Richard leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You keep saying your house. It is my house. Derek shifted, irritation flickering. Here we go. Richard's mouth tightened. Derek explained the arrangement. He told us you were fine with them staying here while you were out of the country. There is no arrangement. I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I never agreed to any of this. Marjorie tilted her head, a small frown. Derek wouldn't lie to us. Derek lifted his beer a little. Nobody's lying. She's just keyed up. Vanessa set her phone down and stood, smoothing her shirt like she was resetting the tone of the room. Lauren, you've lived alone for a long time. You're not great with people. That's okay. But this is what families do. They share. I stared at her. You share when you're invited. Richard's voice hardened. You're making it sound like we broke in. You did, I said. You moved in while I was gone. You changed the name on my mailbox. You're using my things. You're sitting in my grandmother's chair. Richard stood, slow and controlled, like he was practicing for an audience. A mailbox name is nothing. A house like this should be used. Derek and Vanessa are building a life. Children. Maybe a home. Derek nodded as if that settled it. Richard looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. Singles don't need houses like this. The room went quiet. I felt my face go hot, then cold, like something inside me had been flipped over. Vanessa's voice came in, gentle and cutting. You could be happy for your brother. Derek spread his hands. There, that's what I've been saying. I swallowed hard because my throat had gone tight again, and I didn't trust what would come out if I spoke too fast. I'm not giving you my life, I said, low. Not my house. Not my name. Not my quiet. Richard stared at me for a beat, then picked up his glass again like he'd already dismissed me. This is going to be exhausting. I didn't leave right away. I stood in the hallway pretending to check my phone while the noise of them settled back into place. Like I was the interruption and not the owner. Someone turned the television up. A bottle clinked against the counter. Normal sounds. That hurt more than yelling would have. My phone rang in my hand. Mom's name filled the screen. I stepped outside before answering. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. Lauren, she said, sharp and already tired. What is going on? I leaned against the railing. Derek moved into my house. A pause. Paper rustled on her end, like she was holding something. He told me you agreed. He sent proof. I didn't agree to anything. He showed me the messages. She said, screenshots. You said he could stay while you were overseas. That wasn't me. Another pause. Longer this time. Lauren, listen to yourself. My chest tightened. Listen to me. I never said that. I never gave permission. They changed the mailbox. They're using my things. Her voice softened, the way it always did right before she pushed. You've always been sensitive about your space. That doesn't make this okay. Derek wouldn't do something like this, she said. He's responsible. He has a wife, a plan. I have a deed, I said. In my name. She sighed. This isn't about paperwork. This is about family. Behind me, through the front window, I could see movement. Shadows crossing my living room. Someone laughed again. They're treating me like I don't exist, I said. Like I never lived here. Lauren, she said. Firmer now. You're not being fair. The word landed wrong. Fair. Like this was a disagreement about dishes or holidays. Mom, I said, and my voice shook despite my effort. They broke into my life while I was gone. She lowered her voice, like she was trying to calm a child. Derek told me you're overwhelmed. that you didn't want to deal with everything alone, that you asked for help. I asked Aaron to water my plants. That's not what he showed me. I closed my eyes. He's lying. He wouldn't lie to me, she said immediately. Too quickly. I pictured her kitchen table, the place where decisions had always been made without me. You should apologize, she added, for making this uncomfortable. Vanessa's parents feel unwelcome. I laughed once, short and ugly. They're sitting in Grandma's chair. That chair isn't sacred. It is to me. Silence stretched. Then she spoke. Quieter. You've always had trouble sharing. I felt something give way in my chest. Not loudly. Just enough. I'm going to leave tonight. I said. I won't fight in front of them. That's for the best, she replied. Relieved. Let things cool down. I looked back at the house, at the light spilling out onto the lawn like nothing was wrong. Don't do this, I said. Don't make me the problem. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was distant. Try to be more understanding. I ended the call and stayed there a moment longer. Phone still pressed to my ear. Listening to the dead line. Inside, someone called my name. Casual. Like they expected me to come back in. I picked up my bag and walked to the car instead. The lawyer's office smelled of stale coffee and old parchment. Daniel Kessler didn't rush me. He listened as the story tumbled out the deepfake voice, the Hale family mailbox, and the way my mother looked at me like I was the intruder. When I finished, Daniel leaned back, his eyes sharp behind his spectacles. You did the right thing coming in now. In New York, silence is often interpreted as lashes, essentially. Implied consent. They're family, I whispered, though the word felt hollow. Family or not. They've crossed into criminal territory, Daniel replied. He turned a legal pad toward me. Scrawled in bold ink were 3 terms: trespassing, impersonation, and mail tampering. Mail tampering, I asked. The mailbox. He said, removing your name and redirecting your mail isn't just rude. It's a federal offense under USPS regulations. Cantering with the mail is a felony. Lauren, if we report this to the Postal Inspection Service, your brother is looking at federal prison time, not just a civil fine. My stomach dropped. The stakes had just shifted from a house to a jail cell. There's more, Daniel continued, his voice dropping an octave. I ran a preliminary check. Your brother used this address as his primary residence to secure a high-interest bridge loan. He told the bank he owned the equity. I felt the air leave my chest. He leveraged my house. Yes, it's mortgage fraud. If he defaults in looking at his credit, a lien will be placed on this property. You could lose the house to his creditors before you even get him out the door. The word landed like lead. Lien. A cold, hard parasite on my sanctuary. What do? I asked, my voice finally steadying with anger. No self-help, Daniel warned. New York law is brutal if you lock them out or toss their clothes on the curb. You'll be the one in handcuffs. Instead, we strike through the system. He slid a document across the desk. This is a formal 10-day notice to quit. We serve this today. It cites the unauthorized occupation and the fraud. Simultaneously, we reactivate Meridian Property Services. Since they were deceived by a deep fake, they are legally liable to help us rectify the breach. And if they won't leave, then we offer them a choice they can't afford, Daniel said. A retroactive lease at fair market rent $400 a month plus a security deposit. If they sign, they're tenants we can evict for non-payment. If they don't, they're trespassers with a federal mail fraud charge hanging over their heads. I picked up the paper. It felt heavy with the weight of authority. As I stood, Daniel added, Stop trying to be understood by them. Lauren, you are no longer their sister. You are a creditor. Let the process do the talking. Outside. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. You're taking this too far. Mom is crying. Just come home and talk. I didn't reply. I wasn't going home to talk. I was going home to evict. The air in the dining room was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and unearned confidence. Derek sat at the head of my table, flanked by Vanessa and the Sloanes. They looked like a board of directors, and I was the employee being summoned for a review. My mother sat at the far end, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Daniel Kessler entered last, followed by Sarah from Meridian Property Services. The room shifted, the casual arrogance in Richard Sloane's posture stiffened. Daniel didn't offer a handshake. He simply placed a folder on the table and slid a document toward Derek. "This is a formal 10-day notice to quit. It has been legally filed and served." Derek scoffed, though his hand trembled as he touched the paper. "You're actually doing this after everything I've done for this family." "This isn't about family." "Derek," I said, "it's about the truth." Richard Sloane cleared his throat, his voice booming with practiced authority. "Now, listen here. Derek told us this house was part of a family trust. We've contributed to the upkeep of this arrangement. There is no trust, Mr. Sloane." Sarah from Meridian interrupted, her voice clinical. "I am here because your son-in-law bypassed our security protocols by using a deepfake of Ms. Hale's voice. He committed fraud to pause our inspections. We have the digital logs to prove it." The room went deathly quiet. Vanessa's mother, Marjorie, blinked as if she'd been slapped. Daniel didn't stop. He turned to Richard. More importantly, Derek listed this property as his sole primary residence on a recent bridge loan application. He represented himself as the owner to secure credit. Richard's face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray. "He did what it's bank fraud, Richard," Daniel said. "And because he's in default. Lauren's home was days away from a lien. He didn't just invite you here, he used you as human shields for his financial collapse." The chair legs shrieked against the floor as Richard stood up. He didn't look at me. He looked at Derek with a terrifying, cold fury. "You told my partners you owned $1 million estate in Westchester. You used my daughter to buy into a lie." Derek stared at the table, his silence a deafening confession. Daniel slid a final paper forward. "You have two choices. Vacate within 48 hours to avoid a federal mail tampering report, or sign this lease through Meridian. Rent is $4,100 a month, plus back pay for the last 90 days. $4,100, Vanessa gasped. "We can't pay that. Then you leave," I said, my voice cutting through the panic. Richard didn't wait. He grabbed his coat, his pride shattered but his resolve hardened. "Marjorie, get your things. We are leaving. Now. I will not have my name dragged into a felony." Vanessa scrambled after them, her face a mask of humiliation. Derek remained seated, a ghost in a house that finally remembered its real owner. "You've ruined my life," he hissed as I walked him to the door. "No, Derek," I replied, holding the door open for the last time. "I just stopped you from stealing mine." It took a few days for the silence to feel real. The first night after they left, I slept on the couch with the lights off, just listening. No footsteps overhead, no cabinets opening, no television murmuring through walls that weren't meant to hold other people's noise. The house sounded like itself again. I spent the next morning in the garden room. I opened the windows. I threw away the boxes. I watered what was still alive and trimmed what wasn't. My chair was gone for good, but I brought in another one and sat there anyway, hands wrapped around a mug that was finally mine to use without thinking. My mother called once. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. I didn't know. She said, "I know." I answered, and I meant it, but I also knew what I wouldn't accept again. Derek didn't call. Vanessa didn't either. The space they left behind felt clean, not empty. Standing in the kitchen that night, I caught my reflection in the dark window and realized something simple and steady. Lauren Hale wasn't someone who disappeared when she left town. She wasn't someone who needed to explain why she deserved what she built. She was someone who could leave, come back, and still be whole. I changed the locks one last time. Then I sat down in the quiet and let it stay quiet. If any part of Lauren's story stayed with you, you already know why. Some spaces matter because they hold our things. Others matter because they finally hold us.